A week after my husband's funeral, my son abandoned me at an old train station. The house and the company are mine now. He didn't know about the hidden clause. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. I'm Gloria, and I'm 71 years old. A week ago, I buried my husband of 43 years. Today, my only son left me at an abandoned train station like I was nothing more than unwanted baggage. The morning started normally enough. Nathan had been staying at the house since the funeral, supposedly to help me with arrangements. He was quiet during breakfast, but I attributed that to grief. Harold had been his father too, after all. "Mom, I need to run some errands," he said, checking his phone for the third time in 10 minutes. "Why don't you come with me? Get some fresh air." I should have known something was wrong. Nathan never invited me anywhere. But I was grateful for any sign of consideration from my son, so I grabbed my purse and followed him to his silver sedan. The drive was strange. Nathan kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror with an expression I couldn't quite read. When I tried to make conversation about the funeral arrangements or Harold's friends who had called, he would only grunt in response. "Where exactly are we going?" I finally asked as we turned onto a rural road I didn't recognize. "Just need to pick something up," he muttered. That should have been my second warning. But grief does funny things to your mind. It makes you want to believe the best in people, especially your own child. We pulled into the gravel parking lot of what looked like an old train depot. The building was weathered, with broken windows and weeds growing through cracks in the platform. A few rusted benches sat under a sagging overhang. "I'll just be a minute," Nathan said, putting the car in park but leaving the engine running. I waited. 5 minutes turned into 10, then 15. The radio played softly, some talk show I wasn't really listening to. Before I tell you more about my story, I want to ask, have you ever felt muscle or joint pain like I have? Best Joint Care is a natural supplement that goes straight to the root of the pain, so you can move more freely and enjoy life again. Thousands of people have already said goodbye to joint pain. You could be next. Click the link pinned in the comments to get yours. Now back to my story. I watched a stray cat pick its way carefully across the broken asphalt. Then I heard the car door slam. Nathan was walking back toward me, but something was different about his posture. His shoulders were set in a way that reminded me suddenly of his teenage years, when he was about to tell me he'd crashed the car or gotten suspended from school. He opened my door and stood there, hands in his pockets. "Get out, Mom." The words hit me like cold water. "What?" "Get out of the car. You're staying here." I stared at him, certain I had misunderstood. "Nathan, what are you talking about?" His face was completely expressionless. This wasn't the face of someone playing a cruel joke or having a momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated. The house is mine now. The business is mine. Dad left everything to me. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a small suitcase I hadn't noticed before. "My suitcase. I packed some of your things." My hand started shaking. "Nathan, you can't be serious." "I'm dead serious. I don't need the burden anymore, Mom. I'm 45 years old. I've got my own life to live." The word burden hit me like a physical blow. 46 years ago, I had held this man as a baby. I had walked the floors with him during colicky nights, taught him to ride a bike, paid for his college education even when money was tight. I had been there for every scraped knee, every broken heart, every triumph and failure. "Please," I whispered, and I hated how small my voice sounded. "Don't do this." Nathan shrugged, as if we were discussing the weather. "You'll figure something out. You always do." He got back in the car and drove away without looking back. I stood there in that empty parking lot, holding my suitcase, watching his taillights disappear around the bend. The silence was deafening. No cars, no people, just the sound of wind rustling through the broken fence. This is when most people would cry, I suppose. But I felt something else entirely. A strange, hollow numbness that seemed to start in my chest and spread outward until even my fingertips felt cold. I had raised a monster. It took me 3 hours to get home. A kind truck driver picked me up at the station after I flagged him down. He didn't ask many questions, just looked at me with the sort of concerned expression people reserve for lost elderly women. I suppose that's exactly what I was. "This the right address, ma'am?" he asked as we pulled up to the house Harold and I had called home for 37 years. The white colonial with blue shutters looked exactly the same, but somehow felt foreign now. Nathan's car was in the driveway next to a red Honda I didn't recognize. "Yes, thank you," I managed, climbing down from the cab with my suitcase. The truck driver waited until I reached the front door before driving away. I stood there for a moment, key in hand, trying to process that I was about to enter what was apparently no longer my home. The key didn't work. I tried it again, thinking maybe I was too shaken to turn it properly. Nothing. The locks had been changed. I rang the doorbell of my own house. Nathan answered, and standing behind him was a woman I'd never seen before. Tall, blonde, probably in her 30s, with the kind of sharp prettiness that comes from expensive maintenance. "Mom." Nathan's voice was flat. "I didn't expect you back so soon." "The locks," I said, still holding my useless key. "Had to change them for security reasons." He stepped aside but didn't move far enough for me to actually enter. "This is Sarah, by the way. My fiancée." The woman smiled, but it never reached her eyes. "I've heard so much about you, Mrs. It's still Mrs. Morrison," I said quietly. Sarah's smile flickered. "Of course. Nathan's told me how independent you are. How you like to manage on your own." I looked at my son. "Nathan, can we talk privately?" "Actually, Mom, Sarah and I were just discussing your situation." He finally stepped back, allowing me into what had been my living room. Sarah had already rearranged the furniture. Harold's favorite reading chair was gone. "Where's your father's chair?" "Goodwill," Sarah said cheerfully. The room needed a more open feeling. I felt something crack inside my chest. That chair had been Harold's refuge for 20 years. He'd read his morning paper there, dozed during Sunday football games, held our grandson on the few occasions Nathan had brought him to visit. "Anyway," Nathan continued, as if giving away his father's chair was perfectly normal, "we've worked out a temporary solution. There's space in the basement. We've set up a little area for you down there." "The basement?" He wanted me to live in the basement. "Nathan," I started, but Sarah interrupted. "It's actually quite cozy. Nathan showed me yesterday. Very private. You'll have your own entrance through the side door." "My own entrance? So I wouldn't have to bother them by coming through the main house." "This is my home," I said, and my voice was stronger than I expected. Nathan sighed, the way he used to when I'd ask him to clean his room. "Mom, let's be realistic. The house is expensive to maintain. The property taxes alone are killing us. We're doing you a favor by letting you stay at all." Letting me stay. In the house I had lived in for 37 years. The house where I had painted every room, planted every flower in the garden, replaced every broken tile. "Besides," Sarah added, and her voice had a false sweetness that made my skin crawl, "at your age, wouldn't you be more comfortable somewhere smaller? Less to worry about." At my age, I was 71, not 91. I still drove, still managed my own finances, still cooked meals that Nathan used to beg me to make when he was growing up. "The basement it is, then," I heard myself say. Nathan looked relieved. "Great. I'll show you down there." The basement had been finished years ago as a rec room for Nathan when he was a teenager. Now it contained a single bed, a small dresser, and a card table with one chair. A mini refrigerator hummed in the corner. "See? Everything you need," Nathan said. "The bathroom is just down the hall." I set my suitcase on the bed. The mattress sagged under its weight. "Oh, and Mom." Nathan paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Sarah and I need to use your car for a few days. Transportation situation, you understand." I watched him climb the stairs, his footsteps fading as he walked across what used to be my kitchen floor. That's when I finally cried. Living in the basement of your own home changes you in ways I never imagined. The ceiling is low enough that I have to duck under the heating ducts, and the small windows only let in a gray filtered light that makes everything look like it's underwater. I've been down here for 2 weeks now. Nathan and Sarah treat me like a peculiar tenant they're stuck with. They stomp around upstairs at all hours, and last night I heard them moving furniture. When I went upstairs this morning to make coffee, I discovered they'd sold Harold's antique desk, the one he'd inherited from his father. It was taking up too much space, Sarah explained when she found me staring at the empty spot in the study. Besides, antiques are so outdated. We're going for a more modern look. I wanted to tell her that desk had been in Harold's family for 3 generations. That he'd written love letters to me at that desk when we were newlyweds. That every scratch and water ring told a story. Instead, I nodded and retreated back to my basement cave. That's when I started going through the boxes. Harold had been a sentimental man, much more so than I ever was. He kept everything. Old bank statements, insurance papers, receipts from our honeymoon in 1982. I'd always teased him about being a pack rat, but now I was grateful for his inability to throw anything away. I found the first disturbing document while looking for our old tax returns. It was a hospital intake form from 3 months before Harold died, when he'd been admitted for what we thought was just a minor chest pain. But this form had Nathan listed as his emergency contact and primary decision-maker. Not me. That was strange. Harold had never mentioned changing anything like that. We'd always been each other's emergency contacts. I kept digging. What I found in the next box made my hands shake so badly I had to set it down. Phone records from Harold's final month, showing dozens of calls between him and Nathan. But Harold had been too weak to use the phone much toward the end. I'd been the one handling his calls, his appointments, his medications. So when had all these conversations happened? Then I found the recorder. It was Harold's old cassette recorder, the one he'd used for dictating business letters back when Nathan was small. The tape inside was labeled "For Gloria," in Harold's shaky handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before pressing play. Harold's voice filled the small basement room. Weak but unmistakably his. "Gloria, if you're listening to this, then I'm gone and you're probably wondering what the hell happened with Nathan and the will." My breath caught. Harold had known something was wrong. I started recording our conversations about 2 months ago, when I realized what Nathan was really after. He's been pressuring me, Glo. Every day, sometimes twice a day. Telling me how expensive it's going to be to take care of you when I'm gone. How you'll need round-the-clock care. How you'll be a burden on him. The tape crackled and I heard Harold cough, that terrible wet cough from his final weeks. He keeps saying I should leave everything to him so he can manage it for you. Says you're getting forgetful, that you can't handle money anymore. It's all lies, Glo. You're sharper than any of us. I was crying now, but I didn't stop the tape. Yesterday he brought papers. Said they were just updates to the will, nothing major. But I read them, Glo. He's trying to get me to leave everything to him with no protections for you at all. He actually said, and I quote, "Mom won't need much. Old people don't really need much of anything." Harold's voice broke a little. I never thought my own son would. I never thought he'd be willing to throw his mother away like garbage. The tape went silent for a moment, and I wondered if it was over. Then Harold's voice came back, stronger now. "But I'm not stupid, and I'm not going to let him do this to you. I've made some changes to the will, Glo. Changes Nathan doesn't know about. I've talked to Bill Hendricks at the law firm. He understands the situation." Bill Hendricks. Harold's lawyer for 20 years. And one of the few people Nathan had never bothered to charm. There's something Nathan doesn't know about the inheritance. Something that's going to teach him what family really means. I just hope you'll forgive me for not telling you while I was still alive. I didn't want you to worry, and I kept hoping Nathan would come to his senses. The recording ended there. I sat in the dim basement light, surrounded by boxes of Harold's memories, and realized my husband had been fighting a war I didn't even know was happening. Nathan hadn't just been a neglectful son in Harold's final months. He'd been a predator circling a dying man, waiting for his chance to strike. But Harold had been one step ahead of him. I picked up the phone and dialed Bill Hendricks' office. It was time to find out what my husband had really left behind. Bill Hendricks looked older than I remembered, but his eyes were still sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been Harold's lawyer for 2 decades, and had handled everything from our business contracts to Harold's father's estate. If anyone knew what Harold had really planned, it would be Bill. "Gloria, I've been expecting your call." He gestured to the chair across from his mahogany desk. "I was wondering how long it would take you to contact me. So you know what Nathan did? How he's treating me?" Bill's expression darkened. I suspected something like this might happen. Harold was very concerned about Nathan's behavior in those final months. Very concerned. He pulled a thick folder from his filing cabinet and set it on the desk between us. "Harold came to see me 6 weeks before he died. He was quite agitated about some pressure Nathan had been putting on him regarding the will. I found Harold's recordings, I told him. I know Nathan was trying to manipulate him. Those recordings are exactly why Harold made the changes he did. Bill opened the folder and pulled out a document. This is the real will, Gloria. The one Nathan received at the reading was, let's call it incomplete. My hands trembled as I took the papers. The legal language was dense, but Bill guided me through it, pointing to specific clauses. Harold left everything to Nathan, just as Nathan believes. The house, the business, all the financial assets. But there's a condition Nathan doesn't know about. What kind of condition? Bill leaned back in his chair. Nathan's inheritance is contingent on his proper care and treatment of you for a period of 12 months following Harold's death. If at any time during that year you can prove that Nathan has failed to provide adequate housing, financial support, or basic respect, the entire inheritance reverts to you. I stared at the document, reading the words over and over. Harold really did this? He was very specific about the terms. You must be provided with suitable living quarters in the family home, access to household funds for your needs, and be treated with the dignity and respect befitting Harold's widow. If Nathan fails any of these conditions, he loses everything. The irony was almost too perfect. Nathan thought he'd gotten away with manipulating his dying father, but Harold had outmaneuvered him completely. But why didn't you tell Nathan about this clause? Bill smiled grimly. Harold specifically instructed me not to. He wanted to see Nathan's true character without the constraint of knowing about the condition. He said, and I quote, "If Nathan treats Gloria well because he loves her, then he deserves the inheritance. If he only treats her well because he has to, then Gloria deserves everything. And if Nathan is treating me badly, then you document it, bring me the evidence, and we execute the reversion clause. Nathan would have 30 days to vacate the house and turn over all assets to you." I thought about my basement room, the changed locks, Nathan selling Harold's belongings without asking me, Sarah's condescending smiles, and Nathan's casual cruelty. How much evidence do I need? Well, let's start with your current living situation. Harold specified that you should have access to the main house and be provided with a bedroom suitable for a woman of your age and health. I'd say making you live in the basement already violates the spirit of his wishes. Bill pulled out a legal pad and pen. Tell me everything, Gloria. How has Nathan been treating you since the funeral? For the next hour, I detailed every humiliation, every small cruelty, every way Nathan had made it clear that I was unwelcome in my own home. Bill took notes, occasionally shaking his head or muttering under his breath. This is more than enough, he said finally. But I'd recommend documenting a bit more before we proceed. Take photographs of your living conditions. Keep a written record of how Nathan and Sarah treat you. If possible, try to get witnesses. How long do I have? The 12-month period started the day after Harold's funeral. You have about 10 months left, but honestly, Gloria, we could proceed now if you wanted to. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to march upstairs immediately and tell Nathan exactly what his father had done. To see the look on his face when he realized he'd lost everything through his own greed and callousness. But another part of me, the part that had spent 71 years learning patience, wanted to wait. To let Nathan dig his hole a little deeper. To make absolutely certain there was no way he could challenge the reversion or claim he'd been treating me well. I'll gather more evidence, I decided. I want this to be airtight. Bill nodded approvingly. Smart. And Gloria? Your husband was a good man. He loved you very much, and he was determined to protect you even after he was gone. Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in months. Nathan thought he held all the cards, but he was wrong. Harold had given me the ultimate trump card, and Nathan had no idea it existed. I drove home to my basement room, but for the first time since Harold's death, I was smiling. Let Nathan enjoy his temporary victory. Let him sell Harold's furniture and treat me like a burden. Every cruel word, every humiliation, every way he proved himself unworthy of Harold's legacy was just building my case. And when the time came to spring Harold's trap, Nathan's fall was going to be spectacular. Before I tell you more about my story, I want to ask, have you ever felt muscle or joint pain like I have? Best Joint Care is a natural supplement that goes straight to the root of the pain, so you can move more freely and enjoy life again. Thousands of people have already said goodbye to joint pain. You could be next. Click the link pinned in the comments to get yours. Now back to my story. For 3 months I played the perfect victim. I documented everything with the methodical precision Harold had always admired in me. Photographs of my basement room with its single bare bulb and concrete walls. Written records of every insult, every dismissal. Every time Nathan and Sarah made it clear I was an unwelcome burden. The evidence file grew thicker each week. Nathan, meanwhile, grew bolder in his cruelty. He started charging me rent for the basement, claiming the property taxes were higher than expected. When I couldn't afford his ridiculous demand of $800 a month from my small Social Security check, he generously allowed me to work it off by cleaning the house and doing laundry. Sarah delighted in giving me tasks that kept me busy and out of sight when her friends came over. I became the invisible servant in my own home, scrubbing toilets and folding clothes while strangers admired Nathan's beautiful house. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in November. I was in the kitchen making my coffee when Sarah waltzed in wearing one of my mother's pearl necklaces. My mother had died when I was 25, and that necklace was one of the few things I had left of her. Sarah, that's my mother's jewelry. She touched the pearls absently, as if she'd forgotten she was wearing them. Oh, this old thing? Nathan said you wouldn't mind. You never wear it anyway. Because I'm saving it for special occasions. It belonged to my mother. Sarah shrugged. Well, it looks better on me anyway. Pearls need to be worn to maintain their luster, you know. Keeping them locked away is just wasteful. I felt something snap inside me. Take it off. Now. Excuse me. Sarah's voice turned icy. I don't think you're in a position to make demands, Gloria. This is Nathan's house, and if he wants me to wear his family's jewelry, that's his decision. It's not his jewelry. It's mine. Actually, Nathan's voice came from the doorway. Legally, everything in this house belongs to me now, including whatever jewelry Dad might have given you over the years. I stared at my son, this stranger wearing my child's face. That necklace has been in my jewelry box for 46 years. Your father never touched it. Prove it, Nathan said flatly. That's when I realized they weren't just stealing from me anymore. They were testing me, seeing how far they could push before I broke completely. Nathan thought he was invincible, that I had no recourse, no power to stop him. He was about to learn how wrong he was. You want proof? I asked quietly. Yeah, I want proof. Show me one document that says that necklace is specifically yours and not part of Dad's estate. I smiled, and something in my expression must have warned him because Nathan's confident smirk faltered slightly. I'll do better than that, I said. I'll show you something your father left specifically for you. I went down to the basement and retrieved the folder Bill Hendricks had given me. When I came back upstairs, Nathan and Sarah were whispering urgently in the corner. Nathan, I said, setting the folder on the kitchen table. Do you remember the 12 months? What 12 months? The 12 months your father specified in his will. The 12 months you had to prove you could take care of me properly. Nathan's face went pale. What are you talking about? I opened the folder and pulled out the real will, the one with all the clauses his version had been missing. Did you really think your father was stupid enough to trust you completely? After all those phone calls where you tried to convince him I was losing my mind. Sarah snatched the document from my hands. As she read, her face went from confusion to horror to rage. This can't be real, she whispered. Oh, it's real. Bill Hendricks has the original in his office. Your father knew exactly what kind of man you were, Nathan. He just wanted to give you a chance to prove him wrong. Nathan grabbed the will from Sarah, his hands shaking as he read. This is fake. You made this up. Call Bill yourself. Better yet, let me call him for you. I picked up the phone and dialed Bill's number from memory. He answered on the second ring. Bill, it's Gloria. I'm here with Nathan, and he'd like to discuss his father's will with you. I handed the phone to Nathan. His conversation with Bill was short and mostly consisted of Nathan saying what? And that can't be legal in increasingly desperate tones. When he hung up, his face was white as paper. You documented everything, didn't you? He asked quietly. I nodded. Every insult. Every humiliation. Every time you made it clear I wasn't welcome in my own home. The The basement room, the rent demands, making me work as your servant. All of it. Sarah was crying now, ugly tears that smeared her carefully applied makeup. We can fix this, she said frantically. We'll move you upstairs, treat you better. We can still make this work. For 11 months you had the chance to treat me with basic human decency, I said. Instead you chose to steal from me, humiliate me and treat me like garbage. You failed your father's test, Nathan. Spectacularly. Nathan slumped into a chair, the full weight of his situation finally hitting him. What happens now? Now? Now you have 30 days to pack your things and get out of my house. The legal transfer took exactly 30 days, just as Harold had planned. Bill Hendricks handled everything with the quiet efficiency of a man who'd been waiting months to see justice served. Nathan tried to fight it, of course. He hired his own lawyer, claimed the will was fraudulent, even suggested I was suffering from dementia and had forged the documents myself. None of it worked. The evidence was overwhelming, the will was ironclad, and Harold had been thorough in his planning. Every photograph I'd taken of my basement room, every witness statement from neighbors who'd seen how Nathan treated me, every receipt showing him selling Harold's belongings without my consent, it all built an unshakable case. On moving day, I sat in Harold's old chair, the one I'd bought back from Goodwill after tracking it down, and watched Nathan load boxes into a rental truck. Sarah had already left him, taking what jewelry and valuables she could carry. Apparently, a man with no house and no inheritance wasn't quite the cat she'd thought he was. Nathan made several attempts to talk to me during those final weeks. He tried anger first, shouting about how ungrateful I was after everything he'd done for me. When that didn't work, he switched to manipulation, reminding me that he was still my son, that families should forgive each other. The last conversation we had was on his final morning in the house. "Mom," he said, standing in the doorway of what had been his childhood bedroom. "This doesn't have to be permanent. We could work something out." I looked at him, really looked, and tried to find some trace of the little boy I'd raised. The one who used to crawl into bed with Harold and me during thunderstorms, who'd brought me dandelions he'd picked from the yard, who'd cried when our old dog died. That little boy was gone, if he'd ever really existed at all. "Nathan," I said quietly, "your father gave you 12 months to show me basic kindness. You chose cruelty instead. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are." He started to say something else, but I held up my hand. "I'm 71 years old. I don't have time left to waste on people who see me as a burden. Not even you." Nathan left without another word. That was 6 months ago. The house feels different now, lighter somehow, as if Nathan and Sarah's toxic presence had been weighing it down. I've made changes, small ones mostly. I moved back into the master bedroom I'd shared with Harold for so many years. I replanted the garden Sarah had neglected. I bought new furniture to replace the pieces Nathan had sold. I also discovered something wonderful. I actually enjoy living alone. For 43 years I'd been a wife first, then a mother, then a caregiver to an aging husband. I'd never had the chance to just be Gloria, to figure out what I wanted without considering everyone else's needs first. Turns out what I wanted was peace. I read books Harold never would have enjoyed. I watch old movies on television without anyone complaining about the volume. I eat dinner at 5:30 if I feel like it, or at 9 o'clock if I don't. I've started taking watercolor classes at the community center, and discovered I have a talent for painting landscapes. Nathan calls occasionally, usually when he needs money. I don't answer. He left voicemails for a while, alternating between apologies and accusations, but those have stopped now too. Sarah sent me a Christmas card last year with a photo of her new boyfriend, and a passive-aggressive note about how some people choose bitterness over forgiveness. I threw it away without reading it twice. The business Harold left me has done well under professional management. Better than it ever did under Nathan's oversight, actually. The steady income means I'll never have to depend on anyone again. Sometimes I walk through the house and remember Harold's voice on that tape recorder, talking about how he'd hoped Nathan would come to his senses. I think Harold would be proud of how I handled things. I didn't seek revenge exactly. I just let Nathan face the natural consequences of his own choices. There's a difference between justice and cruelty, and Harold taught me that even in death. Last week, I ran into Nathan at the grocery store. He looked older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. He was buying generic cereal and day-old bread, the kind of shopping I remember from my own lean years as a young mother. He saw me too, started to approach, then seemed to think better of it. We passed each other in the dairy aisle without speaking. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just the quiet satisfaction of a woman who'd learned at 71 that she was stronger than anyone had ever given her credit for. That evening I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The house was quiet behind me, filled with memories of a good marriage and the promise of whatever peaceful years I had left. Harold had given me more than an inheritance. He'd given me the chance to discover who I really was when no one needed anything from me. And what I discovered was this: I was enough all by myself.